I found these hearts cookie cutters in my art studio because, that's where we store our cookie cutters. And I've been really enjoying creating Valentine themed art projects. And I happen to have this really beautiful watercolor textured paper that I had created for a sea creature Skillshare class that I teach. And I wanted to use it for this. So I got out some basic craft black acrylic paint, put that on my plate, and then I have 3 different size heart stencils. So this is the beginning of adding some really interesting high contrast artworks to this. You want to be careful. Cookie cutters are not very tall, so it is very possible to get the acrylic ink on your fingers. And I did initially consider using ink for this instead, but I was worried it was going to drip. So I decided to go for the thicker acrylic paint in the end. So I'm just stamping down on my textured watercolor paper with each of the 3 different sized hearts, and then I'm going to set that off to the side to dry. After allowing the acrylic ink to dry, I decided that I wanted to come back to the 3 separate heart piece and paint within where I did the stamping with the heart cookie cutter to really make those 3 hearts bold and to pop against the background. So I'm building this up with some warm red, a cooler red, and a little bit of some plum color just to give some variation and variety so it's not just a flat red going into each of the heart shapes. Now the background was created with wet and wet water application and splattering with rubbing alcohol. The background of this paper was created with a wet and wet watercolor application using variations of red and plum. So the colors in the hearts mirror this, but the texture in the background was created using rubbing alcohol. It is a really great effect where you drop it onto the wet watercolor, and anywhere the rubbing alcohol hits the wet watercolor, it will push the color out, and the larger the brush that you use, the bigger the effect that the drops will be. So I had an idea that after I painted the boldness into the heart shapes themselves, that I would get out rubbing alcohol and I would do some smaller effects with the rubbing alcohol on the hearts. Because the hearts are the only wet watercolor, none of the rest of it's going to be impacted. But I didn't account for the big drips that were going to come off the toothbrush. So in the end, I didn't get the effect I exactly wanted, but I'm still really happy with how it turned out. I had to kind of go with the flow and adapt, and that was a really great art challenge to work through. So in the end, I decided to get out my a watercolor brush and dip that into the rubbing alcohol and then dab that down to create some larger sections of the rubbing alcohol texture to give a little interest and definition to the hearts and to differentiate them, yet keep them unified with the rubbing alcohol textured background. And then I wanted to see what would happen if I dropped more color in, because I felt like I wanted to bring some of the color back in. But because there was so much rubbing alcohol on the watercolor hearts that it actually pilled up a bit on the surface. So it didn't go down the way you would expect watercolor to go down, but that in itself was a really fun experiment and something that I want to return back to at a later time. So I love how this turned out. I love playing with textures in watercolor, and I hope you give it a try too. Till next time!